What are you going to be looking for in the candidate that you decide to ultimately go for?
I'm going to see the candidate that comes forward here in 2026 to help us fight off what I know to be the efforts to make sure that the voting rights that we now enjoy, to make sure that the turnout that's going to be necessary this year takes place. Because if the SAVE Act becomes law, those 61 or 2 Congressional Black Caucus members we now have will be down to 30 within 2 years, and another half of that in the next 2 years. Why I know that? Because that's what happened.
Before Jim Clyburn tells you who he'll support, he tells you why the stakes are structural. That distinction matters. He's not evaluating candidates on charisma or polling numbers. He's running a threat assessment, and the threat is a specific piece of legislation called the SAVE Act. Clyburn has been studying power in Washington since 1993. His 2020 Biden endorsement didn't come from sentiment. It came from a precise read of South Carolina's voter coalition and what it needed. His analysis of the SAVE Act follows the same logic. Strip away the rhetoric, count the consequences. The Congressional Black Caucus currently holds 61 seats. The SAVE Act's documentation requirements, combined with mandatory 30-day voter roll purges, would systematically reduce Black voter registration in precisely the districts where those seats survive. Clyburn's projection, 30 seats inside 2 years, 15 the cycle after, is not a talking point. It's an extrapolation from the last time restrictions like this passed. He watched it happen.
Because if the SAVE Act becomes law, those 61 or 2 Congressional Black Caucus members we now have will be down to 30 within 2 years, and another half of that in the next 2 years. Why I know that? Because that's what happened the last time they passed laws like the SAVE Act. We lost the ability to cast our votes. They didn't call them picture ID. They called them things like how many bubbles are in a bar of soap, how many jelly beans are in that jar. They didn't say, as the secretary said earlier, you can't vote. They just made it near impossible for you to get registered to vote.
He's telling you it will happen again. The SAVE Act requires documentary proof of citizenship to register to vote. Sounds procedural. Run the numbers and it becomes a targeting system. Brennan Center data. Over 21 million Americans lack ready access to a passport or certified birth certificate. Among Black Americans, the gap is structural. Many born during the pre-civil rights era never received a birth certificate at all. The bill adds mandatory voter roll purges every 30 days. Purged voters are not notified. They find out at the polling place. And the bill eliminates universal mail-in voting as a fallback. Senator Mike Lee, one of its co-sponsors, stated publicly that passing the SAVE Act improves Republican midterm prospects. Senate Majority Leader Thune called it a campaign issue if it fails. Neither man is hiding the electoral math. The bill's architects are not confused.
And that's what is taking place today. And I want to see the candidates focus on 2026. What are we going to do to hold on to that vote? What are we going to do to make health care accessible and affordable? Housing accessible and affordable. Education accessible and affordable. Energy. I want to see our candidates who want to be carry the mantle in 2028 come forward now. Lay out your proposals. Let us get attached to your platforms this year so that we can have a successful off-year election. Because if we do not win these off-year elections this year, there ain't going to be no election in 2028.
You have been adamant about
Confused about its effects, they've planned for them. The strategic logic Clyburn is advancing has two components. First, the 2026 midterms are a decisive battleground, not a warm-up. Second, Democratic presidential hopefuls who stay silent on 2026 are burning the bridge they'll need to cross in 2028. The Biden endorsement backstory we heard earlier in this broadcast makes his credibility on this point explicit. In February 2020, Clyburn's endorsement, delivered 3 days before the South Carolina primary, reversed Biden's trajectory after 3 consecutive weak performances. The coalition Clyburn activated was built through decades of relationship with Black churches, HBCU networks, and civil rights organizations. That infrastructure doesn't self-replicate. It requires sustained investment. If the SAVE Act suppresses registration in 2026, that infrastructure takes years to rebuild, if it rebuilds at all. At 85, running for his 18th term.
You were critical in Joe Biden's election.
Thank you.
I will never forget that many of us were going different ways. And the morning after the debate, the Democratic debate in Charleston, I had had a minister's breakfast. That's where we first gave the award named after your wife. And all of the candidates came, Bernie Sanders, Liz Warren, everybody. And many were getting ready to endorse Bernie Sanders or somebody. You called me to the side, you were standing there with Joe Biden. And you said to me, Reverend, I want you to know I'm coming to your breakfast, but by noon, I'm going to endorse Joe. And Biden was standing there. I said, you are? He said, yeah. I said, okay. I said, well, I don't know if I'm going to endorse him, but I'll tell you one thing, I certainly won't go against him if you with him. And eventually I went with him. And that is why Joe Biden and I kind of got along. He said, Jim, because some of the preachers, including my mentor, went with Bernie.
Clyburn is simultaneously making the case that experienced leadership matters while demanding younger Democrats earn their seat at the table by fighting the battles in front of them. The irony is deliberate. Here's what the data and the history converge on. Jim Clyburn is not being alarmist. He is being precise. The SAVE Act is in the Senate. A Supreme Court ruling on Voting Rights Act Section 2 could eliminate at least 15 majority Black congressional districts. The South Carolina Freedom Caucus is redrawing Clyburn's own district with Trump White House coordination. These are parallel operations producing the same outcome. Fewer Black voters casting ballots, fewer Black representatives holding power, and a Democratic coalition that loses its structural base heading into a presidential cycle. Clyburn's ask of 2028 candidates is not complicated. Show up in 2026. Fight for the SAVE Act's defeat in the Senate. Make healthcare and housing and education concrete policy platforms, not aspirational slogans. Win the midterms. Because if Democrats enter 2028 with a shrunken Black caucus, suppressed registration rolls, and redrawn maps, the coalition that sent Biden to the White House will not exist in its current form. That's the strategic reality Clyburn is handing every Democrat watching. Whether they receive it is the only open question. Like, subscribe, share this conversation. These numbers matter.